Now, the newest One Piece chapter, 1138, brought back Who's Who on the cover story. And Who's the first character to actually describe the sun god Nika. And when he does, Nika has a weapon. And it reminded me of Skypiea and how the foreshadowing, of course, when Luffy's dancing. And just Skypiea in general, just foreshadowing for, of course, Nika. And Skypiea is known for its sky battles based off cool weapons. Like we saw with Wiper versus Enel, the bazooka, the staff Enel is using, the reject dial. I can go on and on about Skypiea. Like, we might be here for a couple hours if I talk about Skypiea, and I have a documentary dropping in a couple weeks. And even the mural in the latest chapter had a Nika with an offense weapon, like some sort of spear, and a shield. And it could be a sword that's in Elbaf right now. I'm not too sure where you guys want to speculate. And Ja Rule explained Nika as well. In the same design, he has some great weapons. Honestly, I think Nika's weapons have to be some of the greatest weapons in One Piece. A supreme grade weapon, like from Mihawk's Black Blade, the Yoru, to Admiral Fujitori's Yakuza Kazin, to Whitebeard and Rogers, Murakumogiri and Ace clashing. Yeah, these two supreme grade weapons were clashing. It's a big deal in One Piece. And yeah, it would feel weird for Luffy to own a weapon when we've only seen him known as a brawler, but a change is not necessarily a bad thing, especially with the previous Nika failing versus Imu in the First and Second World War. So today's deep dive is Luffy's Nika weapon, how he will find it, how will he use it, who will train him for him to use it in combat. It's gonna be a complete deep dive, guys. Now, the first time that I actually remember Luffy like flirting with the concept of using a weapon is Thriller Bark. This is my memory. When, of course, I'm talking about the Marine Swordsman Shadow that they put into Luffy, Lola being Big Mom's daughter too as well on Thriller Bark, that's related to Kaido. Like, there's a lot of, and of course Thriller Bark has those sea creatures or creatures in the shadow of the Florian Triangle that some people are even connected to the serpent that was in the mural. But still, a Marine Swordsman Shadow was put into Luffy and he became a swordsman. And seeing Luffy cut up things was kind of weird. It was weird, but it was also cool at the same time. Now, we also saw Luffy when he was Nightmare Luffy, fighting Oz, of course, an ancient giant. And we know the ancient giant is connected to the Void Century, the Second World War, and the First World War too. I think more so the Second World War, not too sure about the First World War. But still, yes, he was fighting Oz with a sword. And this to me was foreshadowing Elbaf, Luffy finding a weapon on Elbaf. It has to be, because Oz is, of course, connected to Elbaf with the ancient giant blood. Now, even in Wano, Luffy kind of flirts with the idea of using a weapon, more so a sword, because Luffy wants to look like a samurai. He takes the Nidai Ketetsu from now who we know as Odin's father, and he explains the famed swords to Luffy, foreshadowing to Luffy getting a supreme grade weapon in the future, in my opinion. We even see a cool moment of Luffy, of course, fighting. Luffy and Zoro both grabbing onto their swords when the build up to fighting Beijing Hawkins at the beginning of Wano. And when Luffy actually unsheathes the sword with Zoro, you can see Luffy's very aggressive with his fighting style with the sword. Like, a lot of times Zoro does it, he's aggressive too at the same time, but he has some skill with it. Luffy was no skill, it was just pure aggression. And Zoro even tells Luffy, you don't know how to use a sword, as Luffy's just wilding out with, of course, throwing the sheath into the nowhere and like pretty much just acting like a brawler with a weapon. And Luffy does a gum pistol with the sword, so obviously he needs some sort of training, because he's still, what they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, yeah, Luffy was that old dog. Now, of course, in Wano, Luffy likes the idea of using a weapon, but doesn't actually use it, as Zoro states. And honestly, I think Oda didn't do this for no reason. I think there's definitely some build up to Luffy final story when it comes to this whole swords, and of course Thriller Bark as well, which is connected to Wano too. So now, some may argue with me, Mac, why does Luffy need to have a weapon when he's pretty much awakened into this Nika form where he's able to grab lightning and throw at the strongest creature alive? Yes, I know, Nika is incredibly powerful. They also tell me that Luffy was able to make goggles out of nowhere with his Delphi. The imagination of the Nika power is just out of this world. Like, what's the point of having a Delphi, what's the point of having a weapon when you can just create weapons out of nowhere? And goggles are not really weapons, but create tools out of nowhere with his Delph Fruit. We even see at the end of Egghead Island, Luffy brings out a bat and fights the Gorosei with it, and even paints it. And a lot of the jokes of Mihawk painting a sword black became because of this, but still, a lot of people look at this Looney Tunes Gear 5 moments and feel like, yeah, Luffy's good. He does not need anything else when it comes to the final end game. And I'm thinking, no. Did you guys see that mural? Luffy needs more. And just look at Luffy's major opponents going into the final war. I look at, first of all, I have to look at Katakuri. Katakuri, to me, is one of the greatest fights in One Piece, Luffy vs. Katakuri. And Katakuri was an awakened Delphi user. He did have Conqueror's Haki. He did have Future Sight. He had the kind of like the full package. And his armor Haki was incredibly strong. And he was mimicking Luffy's moves. But he had the Mogura. the Mogura. This weapon, this trident, really was a pivotal factor in the battle with Luffy. And you have to understand, I think this is Oda kind of building up Luffy using a weapon because his opponents are using weapons as well. And then of course we have Kaido, the strongest creature alive. And I'm not saying that Kaido needs a weapon. Of course we've seen Kaido fight countless times without a weapon when it comes to his dragon devil fruit form. Like, Kaido is incredible, his hybrid form and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Kaido's main attack usage was using the Hasaikai, or a giant Kanabo mace. At the end of the day, Kaido's mace, I don't want to butcher these pronunciations, Kaido's mace was his main tool with the Thunder Bagua and 3 conquerors of the world. Like, that is just foreshadowing of the 3 worlds that has been foreshadowed in the recent chapter. Not foreshadowed, kind of confirmed in the recent chapter. And then you look at Luffy's predecessor. Luffy's predecessor is Gold D. Roger. And Gold D. Roger is not known as the world's greatest swordsman. He's known as the man who proved Haki transcended all. He's known as the man who conquered the pirate world. The Pirate King found the One Piece treasure, and he has a sword, a supreme grade sword called Ace. Now, I'm not saying Luffy has to be a swordsman, but I'm saying the fact that the Pirate King, and of course there's a lot of parallels with Roger and Luffy. I think, honestly, I wouldn't mind Luffy not being a swordsman, but having some sort of weapon that would aid him in the final war. Even look at his role model is Red Hair Shanks, and he has a weapon, of course, the Gryphon or Griffin. I'm not too sure how people pronounce it. I just say Gryphon, but some people say Griffin as well. But at the end of the day, Shanks's weapon, he's not just a cocky man. He has a sword, and that's what starts the whole beef of Mihawk versus Shanks. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, Luffy gets a weapon out of nowhere, they're gonna start arguing Zoro versus Luffy when Zoro becomes world's greatest swordsman. Imagine Luffy has a sword. I don't think Luffy's gonna get a sword of some sort, but I think a weapon would be cool. Now, of course, in Luffy's blood, in Luffy's DNA, they are not really weapon users. If you look at Monkey D. Garp, his grandfather, he was a brawler. Garp the Fist. Even when he fought Aokiji recently, there was no weapon using. Yes, he threw cannonballs and during the end of Enies Lobby, but still. Garp, when it comes to Garp as a character, on God Valley, to, of course, him fighting Shiki, to, of course, him fighting Aokiji. Every time we've seen Garp fight, he's using his fist. So that could be a whole family-related dynamic of just them being brawlers. And then there's Monkey D. Dragon. And Monkey D. Dragon, we haven't seen Monkey D. Dragon fight. And we know he has some sort of wind power just from the foreshadowing. And of course, we've seen Sabo fight, his strongest soldier, Sabo, and he's using the Dragon Claw before he got Ace's Devil Fruit. So it looks like Dragon has some sort of claw technique, like Haki on his hands, that like some crazy martial arts. Dragon looks to be a martial artist. And if Dragon's using his hands like Garp, it looks like the whole Monkey D family just like to throw hands. They don't really like to use weapons. And I could give you that, honestly. Yes, I want a weapon for Luffy, but at the end of the day, his family, his father and his grandfather are brawlers just like him. Now, another main reason why I believe Luffy having a weapon wouldn't be a completely bad thing is because of Blackbeard. Many people are not looking at the optics of Blackbeard versus Luffy. Blackbeard is not his Gurgur no Mi that has me worried, even though that's been helping him win a lot of battles, like we saw against Law, with Marco commented on as well. The Gurgur no Mi is helping Blackbeard tremendously. But the reason why I'm scared of Blackbeard is not that. It's his Yami Yami no Mi, the Darkness Fruit. And that's why when Law was fighting Blackbeard in the anime, you see that when Blackbeard takes advantage of Law, it's when he starts using his Darkness Fruit. And that's the reason why I'm thinking Luffy having a weapon is not a completely bad idea, because if Blackbeard takes away Luffy's powers, his Nika powers, a weapon could be used to fight. The same way when Blackbeard took Whitebeard's powers in Marineford, what did Whitebeard do? He went straight to his Supreme Grade Sword and called Blackbeard reckless and defeated him. So all I'm trying to say is a weapon could be really valuable for Blackbeard as that fight. And then there's Scopper Gaban. We all know it. Scopper Gaban is walking towards the castle right now. Scopper Gaban fighting, he fought with an axe. And an axe is not a sword, but an axe is a very brutal way of fighting. It's a very aggressive way of fighting. And Luffy's a brawler, so an axe would be I'm not going to say Luffy needs an axe, but I think an axe style weapon would be cool for Luffy. And the fact that Scopper Gaban is coming to the castle, and Luffy's already perfected his Devil Fruit, and he's already perfected his Haki, the one thing he still has left to perfect is using a weapon. So if he can teach him, just how Rayleigh taught him during the time skip Haki, if he can teach Luffy, the guy who's about to, of course, who's wearing the same straw hat as his Captain Roger, and Scopper Gaban knows about Joy Boy, if you can teach him how to use a weapon, and I think that weapon is going to be the legendary Nika weapon that's going to be revealed on Elbaf, that could be a huge game changer, honestly. Now, another reason why I think Luffy having a weapon would be cool is just look at the crew and their dynamic. When it comes to Sanji doesn't use a weapon, but he became some sort of modified weapon if you think about it when it comes to Germa. Then you look at Jinbei. Jinbei is a martial artist. He knows fisherman karate, manipulates water, and of course is just a badass character. Then you go into Zoro. Zoro is trying to be the world's greatest swordsman. Now, I think that's cool and all. Zoro is the only one out of the Monster 4 that uses a weapon. But I think when it's all said and done, I think Luffy is going to be using a weapon as well. And I think Usopp's going to level up as well. And he already has observation haki, but Elbaf, he's going to get some crazy sniping weapon as well. I think Usopp's going to go elevate in the arc the same way Luffy does. And I think you just got to look at the crew dynamic, seeing the end of the story with Luffy with a weapon, Zoro with a weapon, Usopp with his sniping, and then of course seeing Jinbei and Sanji just throwing hands with the karate. And of course, like, Sanji just knows a bunch of kicking attacks. Like, he looks like he's just a Muay Thai fighter of some sort. I'm just gonna tell you guys this, yo. It's gonna be cool as a fan seeing this. Now, of course, a lot of people like to look at pretty much the whole theme of when Luffy was fighting legitimate fighters during the Grand Line. When he fought Crocodile, Crocodile had a hook with poison. When he fought NL, he had that golden staff that he turned into a trident and really caused havoc for Luffy, because Luffy, of course, was impenetrable to lightning. A lot of people look at these moments and think, okay, well, we like when the villain has a weapon, but Luffy doesn't. We like Luffy just winning with just his hands. And adding a weapon into, or there are people who are already upset with the whole Nika Looney Tunes fighting aspect. Adding a weapon, they feel like might take away from Luffy's battle genius in a sense, because him just wielding a weapon is a little different. Now I'm thinking, I think if the weapon has purpose, if the weapon is connected to Luffy's lore, I think you have to accept it, if I'm being completely honest. And I think that Luffy's going to find a weapon that's connected to his lore and Nika and the first world, the second world, and third world. I just genuinely believe it, guys. And don't forget this, Vegapunk mentioned how pretty much the Void Century was more advanced than today's world. And I talk about Skypiea when it comes to how they use weapons, of course, the dials and everything. That was cool. When Vegapunk said this to me, I'm thinking Frankie was the one who saw the mural. Frankie has saw the Nika that looks like Luffy, of course, with weapons. I wouldn't mind if Frankie actually amplifies Luffy's weapons as well. He finds Nika's weapons the same way they found a waiver and Paglia actually fixed it for them. If Frankie's able to fix the original Nika's weapon to make them even better using some of Vegapunk's things he learned during Egghead Island, that is also going to be cool as hell, guys. It's going to be awesome. And just look at the arc of Elbaf. The arc of Elbaf might have some characters like, of course, Shamrock, Figureland Shamrock, who uses a sword that has a Cerberus Delve fruit. And then imagine if Garland comes too. Garland is a swordsman as well, that we do not know what his powers are. Luffy using a weapon might not be a bad idea when he's going to come to some of the elite weapon users in the final endgame of the story. And then when you add in Imu as well, if Imu has some sort of weapon as well, that just changes everything. So I think you understand, Elbaf, the arc, and the final story, I don't mind Luffy getting a weapon because of what is actually coming his way. And when you actually think about it, when it gets down to it. And then there's King. A lot of people think after Luffy, well, not really Luffy, after Zoro went King of Hell mode and sliced up King, the Lunarian, they thought his story was done. But then Vegapunk name drops King during the Egghead Island arc, and people are like, wait, King, the same character that got dog walked by Green Bull after Wano? Well, obviously he was recovering, he wasn't 100%, that fight would have been much closer, even Green Bull knows that, but still, at the end of the day, people like to downplay King. At the end of the day, you guys all saw the mural. King was there. Not really King, but a Lunarian was there. And remember how King was fighting Zoro? It was not just the properties of his body that was insane, it was his weapon usage. It wasn't a sword, it was more so a weapon that fought unconventionally. I think the fact that King is waiting for Joy Boy, thought Kaido was Joy Boy and changed his mind, and now Luffy is Joy Boy, I think King but maybe learned that weapon usage from the original Nika. So when we see Luffy's getting Nika's weapon, it's going to be insane, guys. I'm telling you guys right now, it's not going to be normal, and I can't wait. I think King might be the hidden piece to this weapon that's going to be found in Elbaf. Now, another reason why I believe that Luffy will use a weapon in Elbaf is when he sees Loki fight. Loki is a giant. Loki has a legendary Delve Fruit. Loki has future sight. He's peaked in his Delve Fruit, his Haki, and his strength, just like Luffy. But when Loki brings out his weapon, I think Luffy will have some inspiration because Elbaf is not just an Usopp arc, it's actually a Luffy arc as well. Luffy couldn't wait to get to Elbaf since Little Garden. The Brave Warrior of the Seas, of course, is Usopp thing, but still, Luffy and Usopp both respected how the giants fought. And you just reread Little Garden and you'll see. So I think if Loki could be that motivational factor for Luffy getting a weapon, I think Scarpa Gaban is going to be the teacher for Luffy to actually use a weapon. And I think the weapon will be the original Nika weapon that Joy Boy uses as well. And you guys all saw that mural. I think this would be a cool concept if he finds it somewhere in like a castle or somewhere in Elbaf, maybe in the Heaven Realm. If he finds it in the Heaven Realm, this is gonna give me Zelda vibes, like y'all know the Hyrule Sword and all that stuff. So definitely gotta say, I think a weapon for Luffy would be a delight. It would be a treat. If you disagree, debate in the comment section.